Hey there, guys. So, this is just a quick intro I'm recording for this week's episode, and yeah, the structure of this one's a bit different, just considering the film that we will be covering for this week. So, yeah, I just figured I should let you guys know that we won't be sort of going scene by scene. This will just sort of be more of a general one, and this delves into some pretty interesting places, I think. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoy. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of At the Movies with William Fletcher. As per usual, I am your host, William Fletcher, and this week I'm joined by Brad.
Hello.
Mhm. And so for this week's episode, we will be talking about the Battle of Algiers. Is that how it's pronounced?
I believe so, yeah. It's
Yeah.
a 1966 film
Mm.
recorded, well, the language is Arabic in French,
Mm.
and it's by an Italian about events in Algeria.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. So, yeah. This episode because usually we sort of go sort of like scene by scene, we sort of go chronologically in the film, but for this one I to sort of put a general thought out there. I don't know, I just something about it like didn't connect with me, and I don't know if it's because I wasn't in like a correct mood to watch it, but I sort of was like not like there while watching it. It didn't interest me as much as I feel like it should have. So Brad, you're gonna have to take a bit of a lead on this one, and
Yeah.
but I think that's kind of what I was planning on doing anyway, because you were probably more familiar with the situation and have a better understanding of the events that are being portrayed in the film.
Yeah, so this is actually like one of my favorite films of all time.
Mm,
It belongs to the Italian neo. Sorry, my bar, I need to turn it off. It belongs to the Italian neo-realist movement in film, which
mm-hmm,
is also um my kind of favorite area of film, and also like its descendants being third world film.
mm-hmm,
Um, so I think basically that's just like it's a film movement in Italy based about stories set amongst the poor and working class, often filmed on location with non-professional actors, and addresses political issues
mm-hmm,
of the world. And um, this movement eventually kind of merged with like French art films to kind of become third cinema, which is another film movement today, which is in Latin America.
mm-hmm,
Um, and I think this film is really great because it doesn't necessarily focus on making it an entertainment story. It's
mm-hmm.
more a story that uh, is entertaining because it tells the events and it portrays the events as it is, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just sort of for my sort of, I knew basically nothing about this film before I started watching it. I have heard of it, and I'm aware it's on places like the IMDb Top 250. You know, it's a very well regarded film. It's I think it was nominated for a few Oscars. Like it's a big film in terms of sort of history, and it's
Yeah,
beloved by a lot of people. Um, and like I sort of to put my sort of cards on the table, I didn't dislike it, but it definitely feels like it didn't quite work for me in a way that it should have, and then this could be something that maybe when if I ever rewatch it, I might appreciate it more. But sort of in a general sense, it was good, but it wasn't like as good for me anyway. In terms of like what I like, it didn't quite get there for me in terms of my appreciation for the film, and like there's some good stuff in there, but it I just didn't quite hit the right marks for me, if I'm being honest.
fair enough. I mean, I think for for me, a lot of the cinematography is really amazing and incredible,
Mm,
and I think a lot of it um, has a lot of lessons um, for any upcoming cinematographers because
Mm-hmm.
um, I mean, like, if we talk about like individual shots, like the very last shot, um,
Mm.
obviously not chronological, like the very last shot, when they're fighting for independence, you have like a sort of close up on this woman uh
Yeah. Yeah.
dancing around, and that's really quite a nice shot, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like other examples of good shots, but
Yeah.
did you want to go through the film chronologically, as you said?
I mean, I'm not. I don't mind. Like, I'm also happy to just sort of talk about it in sort of a general sense, and we just sort of go to various points. Like, I don't really mind per se, because it's again, it's a film that I feel like if we do sort of go chronologically, you'll have to take more of the lead on it, because I wasn't at times not entirely sure on what was happening, but like I can sort of go along with it and sort of.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like the first. So I think it is good to watch the film more than once.
Mm-hmm.
There's stuff when I watch the film the second or third time, there's stuff that I noticed that I didn't notice on the first watch through.
Yeah.
Um, so something I didn't realize until the second time I watched it was it's not actually filmed entirely. Um, it's not entirely linear. It's mostly linear, but the very first sequence,
Mm-hmm.
right up until I'd say almost like 20, 25 minutes into the film,
Mm-hmm.
potentially even after that, like the
Yeah.
first like almost 30, 40 minutes is not actually entirely chronological.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because it starts off with like this Algerian man being after being tortured or captured or whatever, being forced to reveal the location. Oh, spoilers, by the way. Forced to reveal the location. I mean, you can just look up history. It's very much
Yeah,
based
this
on
is it's
history as
based
well.
on a real thing. I don't know if it's spoilers, if it's based on reality.
I don't know. It is. Yeah, the film actually has been applauded for being one of the most historically accurate films in history.
Well, yeah, that's
Um,
good. Most films about real people or real events typically they sugarcoat things, or they leave things out, or they change things to create a more interesting narrative.
yeah, but I guess like when it's born out of a movement of neorealism, and like it's going to be very much based on the reality of what actually happened.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so it starts with this image, and then this man uh, sells out Ali Lapointe, who is the uh, fi final leader of the National Front for Liberation in
Mm-hmm.
Algeria. And then it cuts to the events leading up to that, which is the
Mm-hmm.
police officers being shot and
Yeah.
the police initially opposing this sort of thing.
Yeah. I think in terms of the structure and the way it sort of moves from scene to scene, I'm not sure how I feel about it, because there's no real, it basically, like, a scene will finish and then it'll cut to like the next shot, and then it'll have like a date appearing of, and so it'll be like, oh, this takes place in the future, and I think it's yeah, it's very sudden and sort of very, it just sort of happens, and I don't know, like, I don't like hate it per se, but I don't, it feels sort of strange and just sort of an interesting way of just going from sort of scene to scene, and probably there's, because this is, from, the mid 1960s, so I imagine it's, so that probably has something to do with it, and the structure feels weird, but and maybe that's even maybe that's on purpose, like it's meant to not feel quite right in terms of just sort of going from
I don't think
scene to scene.
it's necessarily meant to do with the deliberate structure being weird. I think it's more that as well, at least as people who grew up in the 21st century or the late 20th century,
Mm-hmm.
we have been exposed a lot more to films like Hollywood blockbuster type of films where
Mm-hmm.
the plot and the actual sequence of events is um very direct, very streamlined, very obvious, which I think is a little bit sad. It's like it takes out a lot of actual room for story and development and interest, in my opinion, and it replaces it with pure, just raw. We're gonna feed you, we're gonna inject sugar into your veins and to get addicted to this stuff, and it's not really art.
I yeah,
I
I
don't
don't.
think you like that one.
No, I don't think that's like it's not something I'm used to seeing in a film. I don't think you're wrong for saying that. I think like because it's sort of yeah, there's no sort of yeah, it just sort of goes from sort of certain moments and from what I've sort of gathered, like those moments are all like it's showing things that are sort of relevant, but there's a lot of sort of things that keep happening, like the police officers. There's several scenes of police officers being shot and killed, um, multiple times throughout the
Yeah,
film,
I
and
mean all those scenes were grouped together as well,
mm,
mostly. But I think generally is like this is a film from 1966. It's a non-Western film. It's a film that's kind of inspired by um, obviously Italian cinema, and then
mm-hmm.
of course the French New Wave. Being that this film has a lot to do with France.
Yeah,
Um,
it's about the like independence, like Algerians want independence from France or something. Is that what it is?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. But like I think if we look at the films from this time period and we um look at the way in which they're constructed, particularly non-Western films, well, okay, Italy's Western, but like non-Hollywood
It's
films,
not. Yeah, it's not American. Yeah, not
yeah.
American film.
And I think American films have a very different film. Like I don't like a lot of American films. I watch them, I enjoy them. I don't think there are in a lot of cases. There are quite a few that are, but I think there's a lot of American films that lack any attempt to be art and just try to be something people enjoy.
Yeah, they're
Um,
not saying something,
yeah,
or they're like military
I
propaganda or that kind of thing. Like, they're not.
yeah. And then like if you go to like a non-American film, non-Western film from like the 60s and the 70s, like you've got Mikhail Kalatov, you've got Giulio Pontecorvo, director of this film,
Mm-hmm.
um, and you've got films like Cranes Are Flying, Battle of Algiers, uh, I Am Cuba.
Mm-hmm.
You've got films in third cinema. You've got like The Last Supper, the 1979 one. You've got all of these films that aren't inspired at all by any sort of Western art movement. Maybe a little, like France had a big influence on that. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's led to filmmakers treating the audience more as intelligent than people who don't know what's going on. And I think that when
Mm-hmm.
you watch these films, you do actually really have to think about it, at least the first time you watch it, um,
Mm-hmm.
to really understand what's happening in these films.
Yeah, I think this film very much it sort of yeah, because it's very much it's not sort of like like there's sort of moments of gunplay in that, but it's not treated as like a cool action scene. It's more just like
It's a
this is
war film.
a war film, yeah, and it doesn't overplay that, and it doesn't glamorize it really. Is I feel like a good way of putting it because I feel like America, if you look at certain war films in America, they very much glamorize the military, you know, military propaganda, effectively, like like the Top Gun films,
Yeah,
for
I mean,
example.
like this film
Uh,
shows like just yeah, like I think here this film showcases like an escalation of violence, right? It starts off as just like people who want freedom, just going
mm,
after some police officers, and
yeah,
then the police retaliate bombing uh their by bombing their regions and their houses, and then the Algerians respond by bombing the French, and then the
mm,
French bring in the military, and then they go on strike, and it just really escalates. And
yeah,
I think although it doesn't glamorize, it doesn't really say much about the methods of either side, except when it's well, it does actually. It says a lot about the actions of both sides of the conflict,
yeah,
but it also presents like the reasons. Like it doesn't it
mm,
presents a reason for the torture by the French army, and
yeah,
it also says this is very clearly wrong and bad. And then it also says that, you know, I think it displays a lot of desperation on the part of the Algerians. Like there's not really much else they can do. They've tried everything. This is now what they have to resort to get freedom, sort of thing.
mm. I think like because this film also sort of what it's touching on is rather poignant in a sort of modern context, like because throughout in like the last couple of years there have been all these protests about various causes, and in some places they have not yet escalated to violence, which is good, but like I think like
Well, I mean, there's like the whole Iran protests
yeah,
going on at
the
the
Iran
moment when
thing and
they are overthrowing a dictatorship or trying to,
mm,
um, which is very important. And I mean, I think it's like it's relevant that we're talking about this film, which is also people rising up against
yeah,
kind of a dictatorship, but more like foreign invasion.
yeah, and I think like this film, I think sort of this film does appeal to a certain audience, though. Like, this isn't a film for everybody. It very much, I think, will only appeal to, yeah, certain groups of people, and I think sort of like a casual film watcher will probably not like this film. But, like, I
Yeah.
think,
I mean, you know, I completely agree. And I think that um, for maybe not casual film watchers, but people who watch a lot of Western Hollywood films probably wouldn't like this because it is a very different style of film.
mm,
Um,
yeah.
and you know, I would highly recommend to anyone that does just watch Hollywood blockbusters all day, um, try and watch some foreign films, because there are some really great works of art that you're missing.
Yeah, I mean I'm not like I don't watch as much foreign language cinema as I probably should, but like I am trying to sort of watch more because there's so many well-renowned and beloved films that are not in an English language, and I'm not against watching foreign films. It's just it does take time. You need to sort of be in a right mood to watch that because you've got to read subtitles and everything. But like that's not that big of a deal to me. I don't mind watching something with subtitles.
I think it's very good to watch foreign films because like we're not just like we're able to now, like we have these at our it's not just for like foreign films aren't just for like filmmakers in some tiny film festival, like it is for everyone.
Yeah, and some of the most like sort of every year you get like a handful of foreign language films that are considered like the best of the year. Like Parasite was a couple of years ago, and Roma, the year before that. Like every year, there's at least a foreign film that's a big deal and beloved, and I think people, and some people will not refuse to, like they'll refuse to watch those kinds of films because of subtitles. Like, because subtitles are apparently a big problem. I don't really get why, honestly. I have no problem with subtitles. I watch a
I
lot of
mean,
things with subtitles, but like I'm not.
I mean, I've at the moment been watching a lot of horror films, so I'm like, there's a show without subtitles? What? Um,
Yeah,
yeah. But I mean, like, if we talk like about the cinematography here, it is very much great. It's a lot of wides followed by some close-up sort of thing.
yeah.
But I
That's sort of
think,
what I took from the film is as I think like in terms of how it's put together, in terms of like the cinematography and how yeah just sort of the general look of the film. I think that's like probably one of the best parts of the film. Honestly, is how it shows everything because it doesn't again to sort of go back to that glamorization thing. It doesn't like we see dead bodies, people are killed, but and we focus on that, but it's not shown. It's not glamorized in a way that I think a Hollywood film would potentially glamorize it. It just sort of is like it just shows you the reality of the situation, and
yeah,
which is a good thing. I don't. This isn't a film that will make you happy or anything, or it's a film to show you the. And
I mean,
again,
if you're happy at the end of this film, I mean, like, I don't know how you're happy. I mean, maybe you're happy that they got independence.
yeah, because I think because I know some people who would probably not like this film because it doesn't have a happy ending really, because people just want every film to have a happy ending, and I don't agree. I'm fine if a film bums me out, and it's like no, this sucks. We're not gonna have a happy ending because because again because this is also based on real life and real life isn't a happy
Yeah,
ending. So I think this
and yeah, and it's not just based on real life. It's a neo-realist film. Um,
yeah.
it's supposed to reflect the real world without sort of any sort of filter, or it's just meant to be very real.
Mm,
Which is why I think that it doesn't glamorize anything,
mm-hmm,
but it also doesn't really take an active argument against anything. It kind of lets it does obviously position the audience to sympathize with the Algerian people.
mm-hmm.
Um, but I think that's generally because it has focused on being accurate and then allowing the viewer to decide what is um correct or incorrect.
Yeah, yeah, it shows sort of both sides, and from my sort of to put my opinion out there of what I think of like because I think both sides in the way they are going about things are not the not the correct ways. I think the Algerians bombing the French and all that isn't okay, but also the police retaliating and blowing them. Well,
Well,
vice
it
versa.
was actually the other way
It's the
around.
other
It
way
was
around,
the
yeah, but
Algerians retaliating
yeah,
to the French bomb.
which isn't. Yeah, I mean, I still don't like. I believe that's like not okay, but I also do think like, I mean, what else can they really do though? Because they can't really like. They're sort of put in a
Yeah,
position where they can't open a dialogue. It seems about the whole
I mean,
thing.
yeah, we see in the film like they had like the general strike, which was 8 days non-violence,
Mm-hmm.
and like they were told to come out, come work. We're gonna round you up. We're gonna put you in like prisons,
Mm-hmm.
sort of thing. And it was very violent, and lots of people died during that from the police. And there was no resistance from the Algerians. But then also, like, they did somewhat try to go through the correct channels by going to the UN. The UN had no action.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's
Yeah.
another thing I noticed within the film. There's a lot of like changing sentiments from the French. Like at
Mm-hmm.
the start, they're like, go back to your houses, stay in the Casbah. And then during the strike, they're like, come out, come work, or we're gonna force you to come out. And
Yeah.
then at the end, they're like, go back to your houses, we don't want you. So it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
The I think that like I mean I think in terms of like I because I mean the government are not the best it's not like a great place. And I'm just sort of talking in a general sense. I think like the and also like because they're getting the military involved for to deal with these Algerians and everything, and it's just like, well, it's yeah, it's escalating, and it's like, well, if you got like you guys should maybe listen to them and listen to the Algerians and see what they want before you decide to bring in these military forces, or like, but I think it is it makes sense that they would respond to violence with more violence instead of trying to find a peaceful way to solve things. Because
Well, yeah, they did try. They
yeah,
went to the UN. They went with the general strike. Nothing happened. Um,
what the French did,
no, no, the
the
Algerians. Sorry,
Algerians,
talking
yeah,
about the French. Okay, yeah,
yeah. I was talking
okay.
about the French retaliating
Yeah,
to the
and
Algerians.
sending in the army as well.
Mm.
Interestingly, this film was made 4 years after Algeria gained independence in 1962, and it was banned in France for 5 years. But yeah, I've
Yeah,
completely lost what we were actually talking about
yeah. I
now.
don't know. So yeah,
Yeah,
we
really
sort
true.
of. I mean, a lot of the film is just sort of going. It's sort of jumping forward in time and seeing various sort of people, and it focuses on a few different people. Like there's like the sort of the head guy who they're really trying to, who the French are trying to go after. Uh,
Yeah, so I think it focuses mainly on Jaffa and Ali Lapointe.
yeah, they're sort
Um,
of the two bigger ones. They're like the last two as well. Like at sort of the end of the film, they're the ones who sort of have to surrender because they're put in a position where they like they don't want to die, and like and they're basically like they've got to give themselves up or they'll be blown up basically.
yeah, I think it's very interesting the way that um that characters were treated by Gillo Pontecorvo. I cannot pronounce his name.
Mm,
Um, what that they were treated by in this film.
mm,
Because it does focus on differences between the characters,
mm,
um, like I mean, Colonel, whatever his name was, I can never remember his name, but the Colonel, the French Colonel,
yeah.
um, he'd basically done like character studies on it,
Mm,
and there was like monologues. He was just like, "I'd be disappointed if you didn't come out," sort of thing, because I spent
yeah.
the last day
I think
studying
yeah,
about that.
the general is like the best actor in the film. I think his performance and the sort of character he plays is really interesting, and I think he's really
Well, I
well
mean, I
realized.
think I think all of the actors did really really good as well though. Um, and surprisingly, well, unsurprisingly, the only professional actor was the Colonel. Um,
Yeah, that sounds about right. I because yeah,
but
from sort of a quick bit of research I did, they yeah, and as you mentioned before, I think it was that most of the actors were not actors. They were some of them like they were sort of involved in this
yeah,
crisis
and
originally when it happened.
yeah, well, I think that that did increase the validity of the film. I think like casting non-professional actors is a really cool idea.
Mm.
Um, and I mean, you can say it didn't work, but I think that it made the interactions and the instances feel less like acting
And just
and more
real.
like real.
Like this is
Yeah,
a like, like it feels like it's a documentary. Capturing these real moments with these people. Uh,
yeah.
I mean,
And
I personally didn't. I didn't feel like anyone was bad in this film. I didn't feel like, oh, that was a bad performance, or these guys don't feel like actors or anything. I was just like, yeah, they're all actors, and so reading this that they weren't actors is interesting. It's like, well, that's not too bad.
yeah, um, and even more interestingly is that Colonel Matthew is what his name was. Um, was very much like someone who, in real life and even in the film, was portraying a character of someone who was very, um, had a very strong personality and was very, um, active and appealing to the media,
Yeah, I.
being seen as someone with this sort of personality. So
Mhm.
casting a professional actor almost makes sense with that because it's like they're playing it for the people around them.
Yeah, like the colonel when he's talking to there's a scene sort of towards the end of the film where he's like, "Oh, if you think Algeria is like a part of France or not a part of France or something," he's talking like he's sort of in this sort of he's sort of giving a sort of a speech to his like soldiers,
Yeah,
and he's talking about like if you he's talking about there'll be consequences for things about for their beliefs like whatever. I forget what he says exactly, but yeah, it's something like that, and I was like, oh, that's actually not bad. I think he's really he's the best sort of part of the film, if you ask me.
yeah. I mean, like he is definitely the main antagonist now, and he's a
Mm.
very well written villain.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he's just a ruthless, um, willing to get his job done by any means necessary.
Yeah,
Um,
but he's not like because
Sorry.
as we sort of see, he does try to sort of negotiate things like at a like sort of when there's the two guys in that room and they like we want like a written proof that like nothing will like the two guys with the basket and that and
Yeah.
and then Colonel is sort of negotiating like okay we'll stop doing give yourselves up and we'll like not hurt you or whatever like any he writes it down, he gives them sort of a written.
If like throughout the film he'd also done like and said similar sort of things, like and then like been like, okay, yeah, we're just going to torture you anyway. I mean, like
Mm,
it kind of happened at the start where he was like, no, we're not going to hurt you, blah blah blah, but then like tortures the guy anyway. Um,
yeah, there's a lot of torture in this film. There's like this film sort of opens sort of straight up with sort of a guy being
well,
tortured
after he's been
after
tortured,
he's been
yeah,
tortured. Yeah, and like she and he sorry, like and we sort of see other sort of bits of torture throughout the film. Like there's a guy who's like he's hung upside down, like his legs sort of up towards his chest or whatever. Like and
mm.
like guys get is like given like an electric shock or something. Like he's like they I think torture is I mean it's gross. It's not like I know certain people aren't against the thing. Well, in certain parts of the world, it's not. It depends who you ask. Because some people are for it and some people are against it. It depends on. It also depends on the country as well. Because I know in America and with military in America, they've some of them are for soldiers torturing you know criminals and that kind of thing. Well, sort of enemies, but I think this film doesn't glamorize any torture. It just sort of shows it like this is just a thing that happened, and that's it
yeah.
really.
And I think because the film doesn't really, obviously, the film does make comment because all films make comment, but I don't think the film tries to really push a message. It just says, well, if we give them the facts and we
Mm-hmm.
make those facts as obvious as possible, then they're going to come to the right conclusion. And I
Yeah,
think the conclusion that was intended was that torture is bad. Um,
yeah. It
um,
doesn't because certain films will sort of present torture, and I mean oftentimes torture is sort of shown to be like a very gross and not not a good thing, but
Yeah, I mean,
like
like
I feel like
used as a means to an end that's okay in a lot of films.
yeah, but I
Um,
do think at certain points some people miss that because I think certain people miss subtlety. That they sort of think that being shown something is like an endorsement of that thing, when in reality it's just showing yeah the reality of a situation. But I
yeah,
think
and
that's lost on certain people.
I think this film in not making a loud statement
Mm-hmm.
and just showing it makes a statement that's so much more stronger than any film that says torture is just bad.
Uh-huh.
Because it doesn't say torture is bad explicitly, it implies it, and it
Yeah.
implies it very well and very obviously.
Yeah, yeah. As yeah, you said about the torture. Yeah, it doesn't. Like, yeah, it doesn't really. Yeah, it's not really. It doesn't really. There's no real word spoken about. Like, oh, this is so. Like, there's no sort of character saying, "Oh, torture's so bad. It's just a terrible thing." It's just like here's it just showing us the torture, and you could sort of extrapolate from that. They're like, "Oh, yeah, this isn't a good thing." Like, it's not
Yeah.
um,
And
spoon feeding
I
it to you
I
as
think
bad.
it's a theme of the film, and something that's also quite good about the film is that it says a lot of stuff without dialogue, which is
Yeah.
obviously makes it hard for some people to understand, but I think once you've watched it maybe two or three times, you start to be like, okay, that's what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's like I don't need to be told this stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
I
like
think, which I
you
think is,
can work it out, yeah.
yeah, it's show don't tell is pretty much it's not because again, certain audiences, certainly audiences on an American side, I feel like, and on a certain and a casual film watching side, are very much like certain audiences expect everything to be explained to them, like everything needs words to explain to them, like this is what has happened, this is what is happening, this is what is going to happen, and then this is what this means, and yada yada yada. And I think that's why certain people enjoy certain movies or certain TV shows that become
Yeah.
big things, because they appeal to a very wide demographic, and a lot of that time the demographic isn't the most like intelligent people.
Yeah,
No,
of
it's
course.
I that's probably a bit too harsh, but like I mean sort of like people don't want, because I know a lot of people who sort of go on like, oh, I just want movies and TV shows to be fun, and I don't want to be and I don't want to be I don't want to hear about politics, woke politics, like and it's just like, but I mean,
Yeah, we don't want women in our films or black people.
yeah,
That's disgusting.
yeah, but
Um,
like it's I think like the but most of the best films in history have a political message. Like even films like Star Wars has a political message it is saying,
well,
and
of course. I mean, the rebellion was based on the Viet Cong,
yeah,
so like,
exactly. And then the Empire was America. Like, but that film, it's not. And this is far more political though. Like this is talking about people
yeah.
rising up and trying to get independence, and that also probably isn't a good thing. People don't like that because people
Well,
in certain
it
places are trying to get rid of independence for people who have had
it
rights for a
threatens the
while.
status quo, and it 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 threatens change.
Mm,
And people don't like that.
yeah,
And I think Roger Ebert put it guess. Roger Ebert, I can't pronounce.
Roger Ebert.
Ebert, yeah, I thought so. He sums it up best. He gave the film 4 out of 4 stars. Don't know why you'd give anything 4 out of 4 stars, not
Yeah,
five out
just
of
do 5 out of
five, but
5.
like,
5 out of 5. It's
um,
easy peasy.
he
But
called it. This is his review. He called it a great film that exists at this level of bitter reality. It may be a deeper film experience than most audiences can withstand. Too cynical, too true, too cruel, and too heartbreaking. It is about the Algerian War, but those not interested in in Algeria may substitute another war. the Battle of Algiers has a universal frame of reference. So I think like what that can also mean is that like those who maybe aren't interested in this at all, they substitute their own situation for this situation, and then they
Mm.
see it as a threat to their current situation because they're against any change.
Yeah, I think the thing about Roger Ebert sort of saying that is he was a Democrat. He was supportive of the Democratic Party, so he very much seems like he would be able to understand this film and he this seems like a film he would have appreciated, and as you said he did like it, and I think because
Yeah,
this is
maybe. I mean, the Democrats in the 60s were very different to the Democrats today. I think the Democrats today are a little bit useless, almost as useless as the Republicans, but um
yeah, and I like yes, this is delving into politics, but that's sort of what happens when you cover a film about
yeah,
these kinds of situations, and I don't think like because films. I'm not against a film having a political message, provided that the message it's sending is a good one. Like I'm not against a film trying to tell me something about a political thing, but like I think again, the people who sort of complain about films being political, they're not complaining about it featuring actual politics. It's political because there are minorities, which is like it's not
yeah,
political. Like
no.
it's not political to just represent the world we live in.
Other films that have been received negatively, um, the distribution of the reviews are very different.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. It's not.
it's not just like one spike at one and then like three, four, and five.
Mm,
It's like it's pretty even. Like I think if you look at the graphs for poorly received films, typically like it's there's no real spike anywhere. It's like very flat
yeah, but
across the
you
graph.
yeah, it's flat on sort of the lower end, but it's not like yeah, like it's got uh yeah, because I think like because this is a film, the Battle of Algiers is I feel like this is a film that could also be misinterpreted in certain like I think like because I know
Maybe.
some people just sort of go to films for entertainment and don't watch it and sort of take an underlying message from it.
Yeah,
So I
I mean,
think
I
you
don't
show this to certain people and they'll take the wrong idea from it and think that like oh the French they're so they're right or whatever like I think
By the
that's
way, the French do suck, at least in this film. No, I love the French. I do. I love the French.
I just I think like they're just sort of put in a position where they
Yeah.
because I'm not like I
I
think
mean,
that
the
people I don't think
the
any
situation. Sorry.
sorry I don't think any sort of group of people are necessarily bad. Like I don't think any sort of from any country or from any political belief or anything. I don't think any group isn't like I'm not gonna just dislike someone because they have a political view I don't agree with necessarily, or like a religious belief or whatever. But if they can't justify why they think that way, or they have a terrible reason for thinking the way they do, I think like I can't associate or like that person. And I think in this film, the French, not to say that I support what they're doing, but they are sort of put into, I guess, kind of an interesting position where it's kind of like, well, what can they do? I mean, they are in the wrong, but I could, well, some of what they're doing, I can be like, well, the torture I don't condone and I think that's terrible, but like,
Well, I think
It's not entirely black and
it's
white, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at.
I
The sort of
think
conflict.
the best way to look at it is to ask the question, does that area belong to the French? If the answer is no, then it's an invasion,
Hmm.
and the French settlers who are being put there are part of that invading force. If the answer is yes, it does belong to the French, then I don't know why we have an Algerian state today. Um,
Yeah. Uh, I think that yeah, the film it's very much. I mean, it's a very it's not black and white. It's very much like this is, which I think is because I think certain films by certain people and from certain places would try and make a sort of black and white thing out of it all. They'd sort of just be like, here's like the goods, like here are the good guys.
yeah,
But I
I
don't
don't.
think this film really has. I mean, I think it does put the Algerians more on a positive side because of what they're fighting for. But I don't think it's. Uh,
Well, yeah, I think it does portray the French as bad, very obviously. But I
yeah.
also think that it doesn't necessarily focus on individuals being bad or good,
Mm-hmm.
um, or even their actions being bad or good, more
Mm-hmm.
the overarching concepts being bad or good.
Yeah. I think yeah, and also it doesn't really shy away from anything. Like it sort of shows like this is the things the French are doing, this is the things the Algerians are doing, and it doesn't, and it's sort of like showing them, but it's not like obviously like the French are not are sort of if you had like you were to pick one, the French are the bad guys, they are the villains of the film, but like it doesn't really like how do I put this? Like yeah, it shows that the French are the bad guys, but it doesn't like it's just showing sort of a reality to it all, which it makes the French look bad. It's not sort of creating a narrative or trying to crowbar in something to make them look like the bad guys. It's just showing the reality, which is that they are the
Yeah,
bad guys. Which I'm not. Which
yeah,
is I'm fine with that. I think that's fair.
yeah, of course. Also, the way in which the scenes and the actions in the scenes are constructed, um, they're not accelerated. I think if you look at a lot of modern films, you'll have like dialogue like every few seconds, and
Hmm.
then maybe like a gap where there's like intense music and an epic fight scene. Um,
Yeah.
I think in like I want to call Western, even though like Italy is Western and French is Western, but
Do you mean
um,
American or like?
yeah, I think Western films should really be used to regard to like Hollywood,
Hmm.
whereas like
Yeah, because I think yeah, American cinema is different to European style cinema or Asian type cinema because of just the ways it is. Because in America they've got a lot of money to spend and then they like it's not that I think to sort of be honest I think America does make some really good films. Like I don't think they make just completely awful movies, but and I'm more positive on blockbusters than you are. Seemingly, like I'm not I'm not against Hollywood
look,
producing.
there's some good blockbusters, you know. What's it called? Fuck, I can't remember the name. The thingy. Chris, I can't. Christopher Nolan.
Oh,
Inception.
Incept,
Inception
yeah,
exists.
yeah, like
Star Wars
because
exists.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Star Wars is thing. I think Marvel used to be quite good, and now they're a bit on the weaker side. If I'm being completely honest, but
Yeah, Marvel had some good films, and then they just kind of became a money grab.
yeah.
Uh,
Well,
in my
when you produce like 11 things a year, 4 films and like 5 TV shows, you're gonna oversaturate the market, and it is not as good anymore. But like, I think that um, I think honestly, I don't know if this kind of film, Battle of Algiers, could be made by an American. If I'm being completely honest, I think
Objectively, that it could be made by an American. I mean, anything can be made by anyone.
yeah, but like
Um,
I don't think it would be. It wouldn't be made the same way though. If this
yeah,
was directed and or written
realistically,
by an American, it would be shot very differently. It would, and I feel like if an American was to make this film, I feel like there's a possibility that it would glamorize certain things, possibly.
I
Like
think it's so much that it would be an American, but it would be some centric view rather than just an American, because there are Americans who watch these type of films and don't watch blockbusters who would want to create these types of films and not blockbusters.
yeah,
I think the best way to say it would be that an American with an American crew in an American location wouldn't be able to create this type of film.
yeah, that yeah, because I think it would depend on who's making it, like who would be directing it, because there are some good American directors there out there, but like this isn't because I feel like in America, depending on like again who's directing it, it would be changed to appeal to a wider demographic, possibly if this was like an American film and made like today. Because I think America is and Hollywood is about sort of making as much money as they can, and this isn't a sort of traditional blockbuster type film, so they would possibly take it and try and make it appeal to a wider audience, and I think that would be a disservice to the film and would greatly impact it, and it wouldn't be considered as good a film by appealing to a
Mm.
wider audience, which is a problem some films find.
Yeah,
I think.
and and I also think that a lot of these films that aren't necessarily Western are extremely fundamental to growing film as a medium.
Mm,
Um, I think like was it the um first Ugandan
I'm not sure. I
feature
don't.
that came out last year?
The first what? Sorry.
There was a film that came out a few years ago that was yeah, Who Killed Captain Alex? I haven't seen this one, but I want to watch it. Um, I've seen some clips, and what I didn't like about the response to this, it's a 2010 film. It was um
Sorry, it's got a budget of $85, is what it says on the Wikipedia page. What?
exactly, yeah, but
That's
like
insane.
this is an Ugandan film. Ugandan does not have it doesn't have like a
Doesn't have the
um
money and the budgets that.
it doesn't have a film industry at all.
No, it doesn't.
Um,
I don't think I've ever heard of like a major Ugandan film. I think, and maybe that's just my sort of ignorance on the subject, but
yeah,
like
but like
you
I
don't hear
like
about
I
great Ugandan films that often. It's usually great. If for me anyway, if you hear about great foreign films, it's always Korea
yeah,
typically or something like well South Korea.
and I mean like it has been called a film that's so bad it's good. But then it's like I go, well, and I've seen online people like making fun of it, making fun of the CGI, etc. And I'm like, well, like this is like one of the first films made by anyone in this country.
Hmm. I think like because
Like it's the material conditions of the film mean that it is an incredible film.
hmm
It's just not comparable to what's happening in Hollywood. That doesn't mean that it's worse than what's in Hollywood.
yeah, like because I'm looking at people I follow on Letterboxd, just seeing their ratings for it, and like they're sort of all over the place. But like four people I follow giving it a 10 out of 10, like 5 star. Like people really like it, and I think it's a film that people and there's someone who's given it a 2 out of 10, which I feel like I'm not.
Oh,
I mean, I've
you've
not.
seen it, have you?
No, I haven't seen it. I want
No.
to see it now because it's. I mean,
How did
it's
you
like
rate it without seeing it?
no, I haven't seen it. Someone else rated it,
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah.
but like it seems like something that I would like because it's a low budget film, and I respond really well to those kinds of films, and I'm like I respect people who make films with a
Yeah.
minimal budget.
Yeah, I think it's like we've become so normalized as a society um to Western film, like
Hmm.
Hollywood film, and that has entrenched itself in other film areas like Bollywood. Probably a little bit different over there, but um,
Hmm.
definitely like China's film market. Um,
Hmm.
Taiwan, I don't know much about the Japanese film market. I don't know they're off to a thing. We're just gonna leave it over there.
Yeah,
Um,
I think like yeah, because I think depending certain countries and certain yeah I think I sort of mentioned this before, but like European films are sort of got different sensibilities, and they're made in a sort of different way than like an American film would be made, and I don't think that's a problem, but it definitely depending on who you ask, people will react to that film differently because it's not yeah,
yeah,
it's got sort of elements that certain people don't respond well to, and I'm not like I try to be very much open to films, and I'm open to seeing films from anywhere really. I don't mind, but I think it probably has something to do with the fact that like I think I don't know how relevant this is, but like I think this kind of film, you know, I'm open to seeing this kind of film because of like sort of how because I think it's a film that like if you ask just sort of a random person off the street if they wanted to watch it, they'd probably say no. But like I think like film. I don't know where I'm going with this.
yeah. I mean, like, I think it is important to recognize that Western film had a big split, that
Hmm.
being the UK, Australia, the US being countries that thought, well, we're gonna make films to make money. We're gonna
Hmm.
make films just to I don't know, get views.
Yeah. Although
Whereas
I would.
like Italy, France, and the rest of the world, at least like Africa and South America,
Hmm.
um, went and said, well, we want to make films about art.
Yeah.
We want
Uh,
to use film as a medium for art.
yeah. Although to be fair, like I think like there's not. Yeah, you're not entirely wrong for saying that. It's not to say there aren't films from America and the UK and here in Australia that
Yeah,
are saying things, but like to be honest, I can't think of many major Australian films that aren't like the Mad Max films, for example, are Australian, but like they're not really. They're sort of more because I feel like every film, or at least most films, are trying to say something. It just depends, like what, like, cause some are like, yeah, but I think certain films are really going into a deep, sort of political way of things, whereas others are just like sort of not doing that as much. Yeah, like sort of, and yeah, we haven't really sort of been going through the film, but I think we've just sort of been talking about the film in general, in a sort of general sense, which I think is fine because I think the film it doesn't really matter because I think a lot of what it's showing and what it's doing is trying to, it's just showing you the situation really, and the position people are put into, and the ways people, how people are dealing with these things, and in good and bad ways. It I think is a good thing.
have you got anything else to say on the film?
I think like Probably my favorite scene. If I was to pull out sort of a favorite scene, I do really like the scene with the guys with the basket, and they're like lowering it out of the window.
Yeah.
I think like I also really like the scene with I forget his name. I don't remember his name, but him and this woman, and they're hiding in the wall like above a staircase.
Oh, Jaffa.
Jaffa, yeah, Jaffa, and
Yeah.
they're trying to negotiate him, and then they're just like, we'll just put a bomb there, and then that, and because because it's like we don't
Yeah.
want to, we don't, because they're sort of like, well, we don't really want to have to do it, but like we will if we have to, and I thought that was a really good scene, but I think
Mhm.
yeah. In sort of just in general in the film, I didn't really connect with it though. Like I appreciate what it's saying and what it's doing and all that. But if I'm being completely honest, it just didn't like sort of emotionally connect me. And maybe I just wasn't paying as much attention to it because I was sort of not in a headspace right the correct headspace to watch it. So I will rewatch this at some point in the future. I'm sure I do like the film in general, and I will probably go back to watching it again. But I didn't think it was like amazing, but I can see why certain people would enjoy it and why it would definitely do more for an audience, certain audience. And like yeah, I do like it. It's not amazing to me, but like it is a good movie. And any sort of final things you want to say before we wrap this up?
Out of 10.
I'd probably give it a 7. I think like I mean I just sort of explained what my thought about it. It's
Yeah.
very well made. I'll give it that. It looks really good. It's sort of the editing is a bit like iffy, like it's because of the way it just sort of goes from it sort of jumps forward in time, but that's not a big deal. It's just sort of a personal thing for me. Yeah, acting's all pretty decent across the board. I thought the general was the best part of the film, and yeah, it's a 7 out of 10
Yeah.
for me.
Lovely, lovely. Well, it's a 9 out of 10 for me. Like maybe like a 9.5.
9.5.
9.5. 9.5.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds about right. You're very you've been very positive on the film, and yeah, you seem to be uh it seems to have connected with you, but you said it took you like a couple watches for before it really like clicked for you. Is
Um,
that what you said, or?
I enjoyed it the first time I watched it. I thought it was great. And
Mm-hmm.
then I rewatched it and I realized I didn't even realize it's like this is a good film.
Yeah,
The second time I watched it, I realized that like the first 40 minutes was like not entirely linear.
not entirely linear. Yeah.
And I was rewatching it last night getting ready for this and I was just like, how did I not realize this when I first watched it? It's really me.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. Anything you want to say before I wrap up, or just you've pretty much said all you wanted to say?
Thank you for watching another episode of At the Movies with Brad Sash. I'm your host, Brad Sash, and this is your guest, William Fletcher.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you guys for listening to this one. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Brad, this is the what third one we've done now,
Yes, I think there was a Rear Window,
and opulence is the other one you wanted
Opulence,
that we
yeah,
did.
and
Yeah,
now this one. We'll have to do another one soon.
yeah. You've I'm sure you've got some films you wanna talk about, some obscure no well films I haven't heard of some foreign language cinema I'm not familiar because like I haven't seen that much like I'm aware of like a lot of the big foreign language films but I just haven't seen them, and I'm sure there's a wide array of films I've not even heard of, and that um but yeah, thank you all for joining me for this episode. We're getting close to episode 100, which is fucking scary. This is like 90 something or other. I don't even remember. Just gonna. But yeah, thank you for listening to this week's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you had a good time. This is very political. We talked about political things, but like, who cares? We're all adult. Sure, you can listen to me giving my opinion on politics, because just think that's yeah. So yeah, thanks for listening to this one. Check out the other ones. I've done a lot
Woo.
at this point, yeah. And yeah, I'll see you
Yeah.
guys in the next one. Goodbye.